This is the YOB ConvoCast, one-on-one conversations with your other brother's authors, community members, supporters, and friends.
What's up, friends? Welcome back to the YOB ConvoCast as we continue spanning the spectrum of sexual identity in our community this summer. It's been such a great series. We took a little break because I went off the grid. I went off the grid, y'all, for a couple weeks. And it's a really great episode because I went semi off the grid at first with a little pit stop in Southern California, a trip I've been wanting to make for literal years now, like at least 2, maybe 3, I don't know, but multiple years now. I've been wanting to get out there because I've heard whispers, I've caught wind that there's just a thriving YOB community happening out there in Southern California, from Los Angeles to San Diego, everywhere in between. Like, it's just been something that I needed to see for myself. And so I made a layover there a couple weekends ago and got to hang out with this person for the first time in my life and his life. Both of our lives. He's been on the show before. It's been 2.5 years since we've heard his voice, though. I can't believe it's been that long. It's almost a crime that it's been that long. It's our other brother, Keegan. What's up, Keegan?
Hello, Tom, and hello, everybody listening. It has been 2.5 years, actually. It's kind of crazy.
I was like, I knew it wasn't last year. And so then I guess if it wasn't last year, it was the year before. But yeah, it still blew my mind when I checked the records and I saw that it was 2.5 years ago. You were on this podcast, and then the name of the episode was Tom and Keegan Encourage the Lurkers.
Yes.
And it brought back all the memories of our conversation.
Yes. I actually looked back at it too, because when you invited me to do this, I was like, oh, I remember being on the podcast, but I don't remember a single thing about what we said or what the topic was.
Me neither. It was so unmemorable.
Yeah.
Because and the reason we talked, that was the title, was because you are not notorious, whatever the opposite of notorious is, because notorious is negative, but you are well known, you're famous in our community as being the person that welcomes new people with the Fran Drescher welcome gif when she's waving her arms, and it's because it's a gif, it keeps repeating, and so her arms just keep going and going and going and going until eternity. And so you welcome every single member with that gif, and you've been so consistent for years, literally years now, Keegan. You are a hero.
I know. When I listened to the podcast 3 years ago, I was like, I've been sending this gift now.
And you still do it?
I still do it. I was like, oh my gosh, this is just going to be my fate till I die. I mean, if I die, I give permission to somebody to take over.
This is like when Facebook had poking, and there was like the people who had to like keep poking the other person. They had to win the poke war. And eventually somebody won the poke war. We just don't know.
Eventually someone forgets
how it happened. Yeah. Someone won because they don't poke anymore on Facebook. But it was actually very nostalgic because I totally forgot what we talked about too. That's funny. I looked up the episode, and it brought a little tear to my metaphorical eye, Keegan, because in the description, and I remembered us talking about it, was about how you and the boys out there in SoCal had these beach bonfires together. And I'd seen pictures of like you guys frolicking on the beach, or fraternizing on the beach, if frolic is too gay of a word to use.
Fraternizing is also a choice, but well, I accept
hanging out together as bros on the beach with a beach bonfire. And I was like, oh, that sounds so cool. Cause it was emotional for me because I used to live in Southern California years before you guys congregated and became a thing. And so there was a sense of longing, a sense of loss, or a sense of like, I want to be a part of that. But I also have friends on the East Coast. It's not like I'm destitute here on the East Coast or anything. God's blessed me. But there was still a sense of like, what if I had never moved? What if I had stayed out there? What if y'all was born in Southern California instead of the jewel of the Blue Ridge? How would things have changed in the grand scheme of things? But needless to say, on this weekend trip, we didn't have a beach bonfire. That didn't happen. But I did get to congregate with you guys on the beach in Southern California. About 7 or 8 of us. There's a good number of us, I feel like.
Yeah, quite the chunk. And
it was so fun. And it was fun for you in particular, because you were one of the only people there at that beach non-bonfire that I had never met before. And Keegan, I think, this isn't a scientific fact, so it's not true per se, but it feels true.
Okay.
When something feels true.
Yeah, it's headcanon, what it's called. Yeah.
So
Anyway.
this feels true that you might have the record for somebody who's been in this community the longest, but I've yet to meet like in person until this trip happened. Because I checked the records. You joined Patreon. You joined us on Patreon. You stopped lurking on July 4th. Happy Independence Day.
Wow.
2019. So over 4 years, you've existed in our community, and I've never met you at like a retreat or on any other trip. I've seen you plenty of times on Zoom and in our on our Discord and Facebook and stuff like that, but like never in person until this trip. And I got to see you. I saw you in person. I knew you were like sort of tall, and so I saw you across the parking lot, and I pointed at you, and you looked at me, and then we hugged, and it was our first contact.
What a moment. Yeah, that was honestly such a beautiful moment. And there was like, as we approached each other, there was a pause, and there was like a recognition. Oh my gosh, this is about to
happening.
4 years of pent up hugging, waiting for. So
yeah. It was palpable, wasn't it?
It was so palpable. It was almost tangible. In fact, it was tangible.
Yeah, no, I don't want to make light of it because it was lovely. It was lovely to hug you. It was lovely to spend time with you. And you did bail on us because we were having a painting party. You bailed on us to watch Barbie. If that doesn't say it all.
I mean, the girls who saw Barbie get it, and the girls who didn't see Barbie don't. So you just gotta go. You just gotta go see it for yourself, and you'll know why I did.
We'll have a separate podcast. I think Barbie warrants its own podcast. I'm hearing so much. I've yet to see it, but I've heard so much about Barbie that it feels like it warrants its own podcast episode with somebody.
It absolutely warrants its own podcast episode, and I have somebody in mind who I will not name for the sake.
Ooh, you can slip me
offline. I will tell you exactly.
Yeah, please slide into my DMs and share. Well, that was a little, that was just a little snapshot. I had such a lovely time with you and the other Cali boys. It was so fun to step into your world for a couple days and paint together and go to the beach together and go to church together, grab meals together. It was fun. It was a fun time.
Well, thanks for coming by. Yes. And I will say, tragic that it rained one of the days that you were here. It's like never rains.
Like, I know we were eating lunch and it rains. Like, what is this? We're in San Diego and it's raining out. What? I
felt guilt. I was like, come on, San Diego. Tom deserves better than this.
What was that? Yeah, that was so weird.
It was whatever it was.
It was fine though. I love rainy weather, so I wasn't necessarily complaining, but it just was very atypical, for the geography. Well, Keegan, I asked you to come back, and I'm so delighted you said yes, because we're in the middle of this series on sexuality as we explore all the different like lenses of the gemstone that is the jewel of the other brothers. Like so many lenses, so many reflections and vantage points. And what was really interesting, so I actually, when we started, I thought about it, like, do I want to try to like maybe talk to multiple people who identify the same way? Because someone who identifies as queer and another person who identifies as queer, they're undoubtedly going to use different words and have different experiences and it's not going to be 100% carbon copy of the same thing. Like there's going to be differences, of course. And so I thought about that, like maybe do I want to try to like really stretch this out and do 2 or 3 episodes like on each label or each identity and try to get a rounder picture. And then I said, no, I'm not going to do that. That's too much. This isn't like a 15 episode series. Like we're going to try to just spread it around as much as possible and try to identify with as many people as we can. But what was interesting was after we released Alex's episode, Alex, who identifies as bi, you commented something to the effect of like, I have so many thoughts, or I don't know, something of that nature. And it got me thinking, because as of yet, nobody else has commented something to quite that extreme that you had commented on his episode. And so I wanted to like explore that with you and see like what are some ways that you and Alex are similar, or what are some ways that you feel very different from what he shared on the episode, and just explore that. So it kind of spoils it a little bit maybe for how you identify, but let's just start there and then we'll peel back the layers. But how do you identify, or what words do you use to discuss or describe your sexuality?
Yeah, so like Alex, I identify as bi or bisexual. I also identify as a Christian, but I guess unlike Alex, I wouldn't say that I'm a bi Christian. That's kind of a new one, I suppose. But for some reason, just saying I'm a bi Christian just feels weird in my mouth. Like, I don't know what it is about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I've heard, people say like they're gay Christian. Like Greg Coles is a great example of somebody that identifies that way. I'm like, oh yeah, it makes total sense. Love it, live it, laugh it, all that stuff. But, but I personally just, I don't know, it feels weird to me a little bit. And so I feel more comfortable kind of using, just saying like I'm bi, and then other contexts saying I'm Christian, and just letting those things coexist without having to feel like I need to qualify them necessarily.
Yeah. And what's really cool as the series continues and we keep adding chapters to it, because that's very similar to how Matt identifies. I think he was our first episode of this series, identifying as gay and a Christian, but not a gay Christian together. Like he would probably echo a lot of what you just said about putting those together, how like maybe it sounds weird or feels weird in your mouth, in your heart, in your mind.
Yeah.
And so just to be able to have those to separate. Okay, so right off the bat, like the goal of this episode is to create war and to create drama between you and Alex.
The gays love the drama, so we're hanging out.
And the great thing about Al, you guys live out there in SoCal. You probably see him somewhat regularly, so I'm sure you'll be fine. I'm sure you'll survive this.
I think, I love Alex and he loves me, so I think we'll be okay.
Aw. Alex isn't here to confirm that, but we will take your word for it.
Yep, just have to accept my word now.
And now on the line, let's bring in Alex. No,
can you imagine?
That'd be so fun, wouldn't it? No, Alex. For those listening, Alex is not in the waiting room. Alex is not here. He's with us in spirit, though. We're going to reference him probably a bunch. Okay, so that's interesting. Bi and Christian, but not necessarily a bi Christian. So let's take a look at your journey then. Like, was it pretty obvious growing up that you were attracted to both men and women, or what was the journey of putting that together growing up?
Yeah, the journey was super confusing. It was not very linear. I think there's a sort of general, maybe a stereotype of bisexual people that they're confused and like, oh, just pick a side already. But in my experience, I think it's been more of a thing where I think bisexual people aren't confused in and of themselves. I think it's like society, at large is telling them like there's only kind of one or other way to be, so you got to pick one. And so then it causes confusion when you're like, I think I'm neither or both. How does that work? And so I experienced that. Well, I guess I can just start from the beginning. So before puberty, had crushes on girls like other guys in my class. Once I started puberty around age 11, started experiencing physical attraction for other guys in my class. And then didn't really have any male crushes though. But my freshman year of high school, I did have a crush on one guy in particular. But I think at the time I didn't have the language really for like how to make sense of that experience. And so I didn't really realize that until looking on in hindsight. But I did have a crush on that one guy. And then, throughout high school, developed more feelings of physical attraction to girls as well. And then towards like when I started college, crushes on guys was more regular. And so it all just sort of like started in different places, but ended up coming together in the same spot by the time I started college. I think for me, like the narrative, growing up was always like, you're either gay or you're straight. And I didn't grow up necessarily Christian. I grew up Catholic, and it was very like culturally Catholic. And so it wasn't like a huge part of my life or my family's life. But I definitely got the message that like, if you're gay, you're bad, But I want to kind of like say too that I think I didn't only experience that from like religious people or spiritual people, like just general, like I was a teenager in like the early 2010s, around 2010. So, I mean, even just like, what was that, 13 years ago, it was like society was more so like, you call people gay if you want to insult them or if you hate something, or I have very strong memories of classmates being called gay and then like they were ostracized and like we didn't want to hang out with them anymore. And so I was like, oh wow, I really don't want to be any of that. And so I think part of my experience growing up was that I was like, okay, gay equals bad, straight equals good. So, and I'm attracted to girls, so I'm straight. Praise God, woohoo! But I also like lived. I honestly would have described it like this in high school if you could have uncloseted me. I would have said that there's like this thing attached to my ankle, like this ball and chain that I just drag around. And that's all of the attraction to men that I experience, that, and I only bring it out at night and don't let anybody know about it. I can't get rid of it. It's always there. It's always with me, but I'm just never going to say anything about it. And so I actively, was experiencing like sexual fluidity, but I was just trying to jam myself into one of the categories. And so I was like, okay, the straight one is obviously the quote unquote better one, so I'm just going to identify that way. But I mean, so there's this like psychological concept called cognitive dissonance. I don't know if you've heard of this term.
Yeah.
But it's similar to like the Bible metaphor of like a kingdom divided against itself isn't going to stand. And so that's pretty much what I was doing, is just like, one way on the outside, a different way on the inside. And obviously it's like, eventually you can play the game, for a long time or for a little bit, but eventually it's all going to cave in. And so it ended up caving in around halfway through college. And I was just like, I was losing my mind, honestly. I was like, I need to figure this out. I don't know if I'm gay or if I'm straight or like what's wrong with me, or like all my wires crossed. And I must say, Tom, I should even thank you in particular too, because YOB was huge. It was so huge in me figuring out that I'm not straight, which is kind of funny to say, because it was just like, wow, I know, crazy. But it was just like a offhanded comment on one of the podcasts, like way a long time ago. You or somebody else on the podcast, she said, yeah, like none of us here are straight. And so blah, 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 just kept talking. And I stopped. I cussed, and out loud, I was like, oh my God, I'm not straight.
Whoa.
And that was honestly.
And this was back when you were a lurker, right?
This was when I was a lurker. Yeah.
Whoa.
So that was just really helpful for me to be like, oh wow. Yeah. So like, I'm not straight. So then it opened the space for me to be like, am I gay or am I something else? And then eventually I ended up landing on the bi label. And the first person I came out to, I told them I was bi, but I was like, I don't know if that's true. I might just be gay. Who knows?
Yeah.
And, but it has a thing I hold on to, is it's like a consistent ongoing attraction to women and to men. It's like, yes, I keep experiencing that. And so anytime I have a doubt, I'm like, no, I'm bisexual. So I just gotta let that be what it is. So yeah, that's pretty much how I got to the way I identify today.
Wow. Well, that is, it's so cool anytime the Lord uses YOB, however he does, with people in ways that I don't even know. So like for us to just whoever made that comment, whether it was me or somebody else, like it was cool that that could land with you over there across the country and just be part of the journey of you piecing life together, and faith and sexuality, and making it all come together. I asked Alex this because I think, and I'm hoping that episode, and I hope this episode with it helps people kind of dismantle the whatever the vision or whatever the perspective of whatever a bi person looks like, whatever people who identify mostly as gay or SSA, who experience exclusive, if not total, attraction to the same sex, like this vision of a bi person who is 50-50, like attracted to men and women, and has way more of like a feasible, quote unquote, normal path to one day find a woman or find someone of the opposite sex and get married and have kids and all that, and live that life, chase those dreams. And it's just like, I've learned a little bit about bisexuality over the years, and I learned a lot from that conversation with Alex. He talked about being roughly 85% attracted to men, 15% to women. I'm curious if like you have like some sort of a number in your mind, or if that's like a silly game to you, or the secondary question to it is like, is the attraction split up pretty equally as far as physical attraction, emotional attraction, whatever other categories of attraction there are? Like, does it shift differently between men and women? Is it the same across the board? Like, how do you break it up a little bit, just to understand how you're wired a little bit?
Yeah, that's a great question. This will probably get in a little bit into the aspects of sexuality I struggle with, but it is like one of those things where I do struggle with the percentages a little bit. I know that I experience attraction, I think, more often towards men, which actually, when I listened to Alex's podcast, that was a thought I had, and this is probably true of just bisexual people by nature, is that they can kind of blend in a little more into like a straight category, especially if they're married. And so I'm kind of wondering if like the people who are like very marginally attracted to men who would maybe be considered bisexual are just not in YOB because it's not like a big enough experience for them to want to like seek about it. And like, yeah, that's just like a general true thing of bisexuals in general is like, it's hard to know how many there really are because there could be tons, but they're just like not open about it. And maybe don't necessarily notice it themselves all the time.
There are some people who subscribe to the notion that everybody on the planet is bisexual because there's like, even if you're only like 0.0001% attracted to the same sex, like that still counts, quote unquote. Like there are some people who have that belief. I don't know that I necessarily have that belief, but because I find elements of women attractive. It's not like, ew, women are gross, disgusting creatures. You know, like there are elements of femininity in women that I find attractive, but not necessarily enough for me to necessarily identify as bisexual. But yeah, anyway, like so you struggle with percentages.
I know I lean more towards men. Probably. But here's what I'll say is a common thing that a lot of us probably in YOB, and I'm sure just generally as Christians have experienced in the past, or even maybe in our present, is this like idea that like same-sex attraction is bad, like bad. And then on the flip side, opposite sex attraction is like so like good and beautiful and like God ordained, like nothing wrong with it. And I don't necessarily want to speak on behalf of gay men or lesbians because I'm neither of those things. But I just imagine that like being completely thrust into an all bad category would be very like shame inducing and very damaging. But then it's like, well, so my unique struggle and the thing with percentages would be like, okay, so then how do I fit in to that? Because it's not like I'm 50% gay and 50% straight. It's like I'm 100% bisexual. That's what I like to say.
Yeah.
You know, I'm 100% bisexual. The way I experience sexuality, like in my body, feels the same, even if the gender in front of me is different. Like, so for example, like the way like a crush quickens my heart rate, and I want to like hug them and be near them, or like, you know, listen to everything they say and just like want to explore the landscape of their mind, you know, all that stuff. Feels the same
that was very
bodily,
poetic.
Whether it's like a man or a woman. What did you say?
I said that was very poetic. I want to explore the landscape of your mind.
The landscape of the,
you are a poet. You are a poet, and you know it.
I do write poetry. That's on my like tick for gay card.
Right. Poetry. Yeah. How many straight male poets are there though? Let's be real.
Hundreds, dozens, like anyway.
So many.
Stereotypes, all that stuff. But anyway, so I would say that like bodily, it's like, it's not like I can tell the difference when I have a crush on a man or a woman. Like, it's not like, oh, because you're a man, like I am, you know, 60% more attracted to you. If you were a woman, like this crush would be like, you know, whatever, less, or something like that. So when I hear stuff about like percentages and stuff, I'm like, well, I mean, it really does feel like the sexual fluidity of, you know, it depends on the person in front of me. Like, it feels like the percentages is like putting everything in a vacuum and being like, okay, just this pretend scenario where there's this perfectly attractive man that for my perfect whatever, and then same with the female in front of me. It's like, okay, percentages, which one? But like life isn't like that. So it's like, I don't know, like it could just depend on, you know, interactions with them, or it could depend on the day. I don't really know. So it's kind of a thing I've had to learn to just sort of hold open-handedly and just be like, okay, I know I experience both. I think it leans more towards men, but like, I don't know what else to say besides that.
Yeah. And I've heard other bisexual people say that like, it's not like fixed that way. And even Alex mentioned it. It's like his whole life, he hasn't been 85-15 his whole life. He talked about younger, maybe it was more attraction for women growing up, and you can experience seasons of your life, I'm sure, where maybe you have seasons of your life where you're more attracted to men than before, or maybe more attracted to certain women than before. And it doesn't, you know, it's just cyclical, it changes. It's not fixed. I guess that's something to take away from this conversation. If people, again, have that vision that you're attracted 50-50 all the time, and that's like not, I feel like that's not the case for most, if not any bisexual person. So just putting that out there. Before we get to struggles, you referenced struggles and blessings, because we will close our conversation that way. I wanted to open the floor. If there was anything else, I don't know if you took notes or if you have anything in your mind that pops out, but like, was there anything from that conversation with Alex that was interesting, or that you wanted to comment on or contrast, or or echo and say amen, or yeah, I don't know. I was just curious about his episode and how that landed with you.
Yeah, I will say, so yeah, the reason that sparked so many thoughts in me was just that like I was like, oh, I experienced so many of these things, and then like I was so curious about the reasons why I don't experience things maybe the same way.
Hmm.
A silly one, which is I do experience I think the same way, is he mentioned this thing called bipanic,
By panic.
which when I heard that phrase, I was like, that's what that thing is. There's this show, and I have to mention this. There's this show called Heartstopper. Tom, have you seen this
I
show?
haven't. No, it's been all the rage in Yob at times, but I've not seen it yet. No, it's in the queue.
Okay.
It's in the queue.
Okay, yeah, definitely put it in the queue. As a bisexual person, that show was like the first thing I've encountered where I was like, oh, I feel represented. And obviously, you've talked
Mm.
about representation in media and stuff, and it's like definitely not perfect, and because I'm a Christian and all that stuff. But so anyway, literally in that show, there's this scene where one of the main characters is like watching Pirates of the Caribbean with Keira Knightley and Orlando Bloom, and he just sort of is like looking back and forth at them, and then he just goes like, "Oh no, am I, am I bi?" kind of thing.
Like who do I be attracted to?
Yeah, he's like, and
Yeah.
he Googles like bisexuality out of that. And that exact movie, those same exact people, I was like a little whatever teenager
Mm.
thing, and was like, oh, wait, am I experiencing what is? It was just a very weird feeling, confusing feeling because I didn't have language for it. But
Interesting.
it was just funny that it was like the same two people. Anyway, so I just wanted, yeah, just to relate to the silly example of bipanic is a thing. If there's an attractive like couple in front of me, it's like, oh, you're both attractive.
Just bounce your eyes
I'll
back
just,
and forth or avert them
yeah, just
altogether.
bounce my eyes back
One
and
of
forth.
those. That's so interesting because I'm sure there are people listening too who like light bulbs are going off, light switches and bulbs maybe about about that phrase by panic.
Yeah, definitely super interesting. I honestly forgot what the second thing I was going to say was about Alex's podcast. If it comes to me,
If it comes up, I'll insert it naturally right there. Well, Keegan, let's start on the struggle bus and talk about what's hard. And then we'll end on a high note about the blessings, about the way that you are, the way that you are. So yeah, what's hard about having a bisexual orientation?
Tom, I ride the struggle bus every day in
Don't
more
we
than one
all?
way, not just sexuality. So I'm pleased to share my view from inside the struggle bus.
Mm-mm.
So well, yeah, I already kind of mentioned like trying to figure out how to accept, I suppose, my attractions if like society, if God or whoever views them as like, half good and half bad. It's like, well, how do I live in light of that? Like, do I accept all my attractions? Like, do I be half celibate? Do I like shove away and repress these bad attractions, or like, do I just like dive headfirst into the good ones because they're quote unquote good? And which I should probably say, just for the sake of saying it, that I think that's a really bogus idea. I've come to the belief that attractions are like neutral, and so I think there's nothing inherently good or bad about either of them, and so it's been really helpful, I think, for me to realize that yes, there's obviously elements of same-sex attraction that are broken, but there's also aspects of it that are beautiful, that I've seen God working in my life through. And the same can be said for opposite sex attractions. I think there's this idea that, oh, that's the good stuff, but it's also broken. And absolutely, there's lots of beautiful things about that too. But it's been really helpful for me to just kind of hold those things and be like, okay,
Yeah.
these are just what they are, and they don't have to be good or bad. Obviously, still working on it. I have definitely not arrived. Like lots of internalized homophobia. And here's an interesting thought too, Tom, is that I also experienced trouble and problems expressing my opposite sex attractions as well. I think just because of I kind of caught the tail end of purity culture. So it's like if there's a beautiful woman, it's like avoid looking at her, like don't commit lust or whatever. And then obviously like all the internalized messages about like gays having their agendas and their rainbows and being horrible. So it's anyway. So which is it's all just to say that I definitely haven't arrived on some of these things. But it is a struggle bus in that area. Another area on the struggle bus that I currently frequently write on, which is, I think, maybe unique, maybe not, is like, who do I get close to? Because I think you might have talked to this with Alex a little bit, where, there's this idea like, okay, straight men at our men's retreat, like, let's talk about porn and sex, and you better not get close to those women because they're going to fall in love with you and you're going to want to have sex with them. And then you're going to impregnate them and they're going to think you love them and you don't, you were just horny. And then they're going to be so ruined and not a virgin anymore. And you're like, what? Wow.
What accent is that? What voice are you using?
I honestly don't even know what that was.
Is that Mississippi? Is that Alabama? Where are you?
It's yeah, there's nothing wrong with the South. Love people from the South.
We heart the South. Yeah, but yeah, that's funny.
We heart the South. We really do. But yeah, there's the idea that if you're a man with a woman, it's like something's gonna go wrong there. So make sure there's lots of boundaries and barriers and stuff. And so if I'm bisexual, what the heck do I do? Like, who do I get close to? Because on the one hand, I'm gonna make this girl fall in love with me or something and I want to have sex with her. But then on the other hand, is it like, okay, I'm going to fall in love with some guy, or I'm going to just want to have sex with him and it's just going to ruin the relationship. And I think it touches on a huge aspect that God taught me through my sexuality of opposite sex relationships just being really needed and important in the church. And I think it's a huge area that we've missed because we're afraid.
Yeah.
And so it's like, well, I just don't have a choice. Every single person, whatever, I'm a threat. I'm going to have sex with everybody. I've had to just be like, okay, this is just daily. I'm doing that. So, and I'm making it work, I think. So, I think there's a positive aspect to that where I can invite, other maybe straight people or even gay people to just seek authentic relationships with people regardless of their gender.
I don't know if that did come up with my conversation with Alex. So that's an interesting new, element of the bi conversation. I guess real quick, because we're running low on time, Keegan. I wish we could talk for a long time, but jumping from the struggle bus to maybe the triumph train or some other vehicle.
Oh,
I don't know. Just
the alliteration.
Trying to be poetic with you and trying to up my game a little bit, But how has God used your bisexuality, or how is he using it, or how are you hoping he uses it, or some combination of those questions?
Yeah. Great questions. I figured I'd answer this in the form of a story. It's a brief story, so I'll be brief. But when I was in high school, I was in this psychology class my junior year, and my teacher, Mrs. Neely, who, if she's listening to this, hi, I love you. She probably.
What up, Mrs. Neely?
Maybe I'll just send this to her. I love her so much. But hello. So this girl raised her hand when we were working on this worksheet thing, and she was like, Mrs. Neely, do you think that bisexuality is real? And she just smiled and responded I really do think there are people who can see beauty in more than one type of person. And then she just sort of left it at that and walked away. And little did she know, my little, am I gay or straight kind of person, whatever, all hidden in the closet was sitting right there. And I think that honestly was a seed for me to be like, maybe there's something not terrible about what I'm experiencing. And so I've come to, and so now, and I think, obviously God has played a huge role in this, is I've come to this place now, which I'm obviously, like I said before, I'm still working on, but I think that the ability to see beauty in all kinds of people, regardless of their gender, is pretty cool. And so now, and I honestly never thought I would say anything like this or believe this, but I am proud to say that I'm bi. And I think that, like I've mentioned with the importance of having cross-gender relationships in the church, and there's various things that God's met me in my sexuality and getting to do my little ministry here in San Diego, where I just am God has clearly been all over all over this in my life and in my journey. And so it's kind of cool to be like, wow, I am what I am, and I'm attracted to different kinds of people, and I think that's beautiful.
Gosh, the ability to see beauty in different types of people like that is pretty poetic. If we're talking about poetry, shout out to your teacher. That's
poetry again.
It speaks, it resonates. That's so beautiful. That is a great note to end on, because I I just love, I love getting to explore these little subsets of our community because I reckon the vast majority of our community does not identify as bi. So I feel like that was the other thing. Was this the other thing you wanted to mention? Was like, do you feel like a minority of a minority? Is that something
that was the thing. That was actually the thing.
Because Alex said he doesn't. Alex said something like he feels just as queer as the rest of us or something. I don't know. But then I thought I got the sense that maybe you disagreed with that a little bit. So
yeah, I'll just briefly say that as opposed to Alex, I have felt as sort of minority within a minority, which is funny to say because statistically there's more bisexual people than gay or lesbian people, just by fact of there's women and men included in that statistic.
Right.
But I do feel, especially, in spaces like YOB, or other side B spaces like, oh man, like, I don't know, like, what if I end up like wanting to date a girl? Is that going to make somebody feel angry or jealous or, are they going to revoke my gay card or not want to have anything to do with me anymore? Or will they be happy for me and really excited and it'll just be like a normal thing, like any other like mixed orientation marriage type of thing. But that's been something that I think I've personally struggled with. And even, I do this. I'm such a people pleaser, Tom, where I like, in some spaces, I'm like, oh yeah, like that girl's so cute. And then around, side B people or other gay people, I'm like, oh yeah, like that guy, so hot. Oh my gosh. So, I definitely tend to play the crowd, I think, which is something I need to work on and grow in. But yeah, I have felt that way, but it's more about myself, I think, than it is about the people in YOB or other side B spaces, I'd say.
Even though I don't identify as bi, I identify as a people pleaser and an overthinker. So there's that. Because even as you were saying all that, I was like, you know what? If I were in Keegan's shoes, I would absolutely think the same thing. I would feel like I would be thinking that they're thinking like, oh, he's not as gay as us, or he's not necessarily as like, if we're hunkering down for singleness and celibacy for life, hooray. If we're hunkering down for that, like Keegan statistically he has a better chance of maybe not doing that. And maybe he won't be a part of us really. Maybe he'll get married and he'll just kind of forget about us. And so like, there could be bitterness there. There could be sadness there. There could be like pre-sadness, pre-bitterness, like just thinking what you might do or decide or whatever God has for you down the road from where you are right now as a single person. So I totally get where you're coming from as far as just like wondering what the perception is or where you fit in. But I also will be the first to say you absolutely fit in, Keegan, and you're just such a, like, I just smile. Like, it hasn't gotten old yet. The bit about the Fran Drescher gif, who I've just been learning, the Writers Guild of America, or the actors, whatever they are, the actors something, whatever group they're part of, they're on strike. And she's the president of the actors who are on strike. I see her in the news doing these interviews.
What?
Fran Drescher, yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So I thought about you. I was like, wow, that lady from The Nanny doing her little hand motions. She's the president of the Screen Actors Guild. I guess that's what it is. The Screen Actors Guild.
Interesting.
Yeah. So there you go.
Wow.
Anyway.
Little does she know she's the YOB icon.
She's a YOB icon. As are you, Keegan. That's what I wanted to say. That's what I wanted to say is that, yeah, I just love your presence here. And the fact that you're in the mix with all those SoCal boys is really cool, just to see you be on part of the kind of a local iteration of our community. I'm just so glad that you're in this community. I'm so glad you're with us.
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, I'm glad to be a part of the community and exceptionally blessed to be a part of the community. And I will say for my part too, if I ever do get married, I'd have no plans to leave YOB or to leave anybody. So Aww. I would not just forget. How could I forget about this community? So it's too good.
I will refer back to this episode. If you ever dare leave, Keegan, no,
it's on record now.
You're putting it out there.
20 years down the line, if something happens, please shut this.
I reconciled long ago that some people, YOB is a season. Some people come in for a year or two or less, or longer, but then some leave, and I do my best. I'm human, but I do my best to reserve bitterness and to not be judgmental or to feel too much sadness. So you don't necessarily have to lock yourself into this for life. But I jealously, secretly hope that you're around for a really long time, as I do most of our community.
Me too.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Well, Keegan, it was lovely just getting to chat with you again. Keegan, I hope if you're up for it, if you want to do more of these episodes, I would love to chat more with you. This is like so much fun. Why has it been over 2 years since you were in the studio?
There's a lot of people to talk to. I mean,
there's a lot of people to talk to, but yeah, it was great. Once again, it was great talking to you. I'm curious if any listeners out there, if you resonate with bi panic, or if you want to add more dimensions to the bi gemstone, please comment on our episode. Go to yourotherbrothers.com/podcast. Find the ConvoCast page and find this episode with Keegan, and tell us a story about your bisexuality, which is definitely different from Keegan's, which is definitely different from Alex's, and maybe similar too. Comment your similarities if you hear them. But I also would love to hear from other people who identify as bi listening to this episode. Please do that. Keegan, I hope to make it out to California again. I had, again, a delightful trip out there. I hope you make it to one of our retreats one day, one of these days. I hope to see you at such an event.
Wink, wink, hint, hint.
or you know.
There's one coming up? I don't know.
Well, there is one coming up real soon. I don't know if you can make the plans, but
did I hear about that?
Yeah, it's just out there in the universe. But nonetheless, whenever I see you again, it'll be great. I'll have to check the records now to see who have I known the longest who I've yet to meet in person. I wonder who that person is.
Oh yeah,
because you no longer hold that mantle. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I guess I can't anymore because we've met. So
we've met, we've touched, we've laughed, we've cried. We didn't cry actually. We should cry sometime.
Okay, poets. Just send me one of your poems.
I want to send you one of my poems. Shoot me your address, and I want to send you a poem, and then we'll go from there. And then also remember, slide into my DMs with someone who would be great for the Barbie review.
I'm writing notes now. I promise to take care of it.
All right. So listeners, stay tuned for that Barbie podcast. I don't know when we'll talk about Barbie. I would love to. I have to see the movie first, but in the more immediate future, stay tuned as we continue spanning the spectrum this summer. As this summer winds down. Oh my gosh. Summer's wrapping up soon. We got a few more conversations to have though, so I'm excited to have them. So stay tuned for those. Listeners, until we cast our next convo, see you then.
Bye everybody.
Bye. Bye, remember?
Bye. Hello.
What's up?
Hi. This is so fun to see you now because it's like I've seen your real body.
My essence. You've touched me.
I've not only have I touched you, I've hugged you.
Yes, I know. Likewise. You stole one of my conversation points right off the bat, but there we go. That's fine.
One of your conversation points is that we saw each other in person.
Yeah. I've got a story. I've got a setup. I've got a whole setup for it. So yeah.
Oh my God.